Pets serve crucial roles to every Skyblock player, whether it be to deal the highest amount of damage possible to leveling your mining XP faster. However, not all pets provide as much utility as others, and it can be fairly tricky to go for specific pets if a player is unsure of how much value for money it is. That's why in today's video I'll be ranking all 47 pets inside Hypixel Skyblock in a simple and easy to follow tier list to help guide you on which pets you should focus in a set order. But before we continue, if you have any further questions or comments about this video, feel free to visit me over on my Twitch streams. I stream every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The links are down in the description below. With all that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Alrighty, so as you can see, today's video is going to be a bit of a different one as we aren't on Hypixel Skyblock but rather on the tier list website, and I'm going to be ranking all of the pets that you can see down below there in a specific order, which should help guide you on which ones you want to go for first and then which ones you can go after that and which ones you should tend to avoid unless you're really just going for pet score and don't actually really have a use at all. So to start things off, I sort of want to reiterate just the rankings on the left hand side here. For the S plus ranking, this is going to be the must have, the pets that you definitely should have in your pet menu and will provide you a lot of value, followed by the S ranking, which is going to be some great pets and really good options but are a little bit more specific, aren't super necessary, and you can go without them but you're much better with them. Then for A ranking, it's going to be more good pets, not as good as S tier pets but more so pets that are more catered towards specific classes or have very niche uses but are still very good nonetheless. Then for the B tier, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is sort of the mid-range. It's like they're good pets, but they aren't super useful either. You don't really need them, but they do have value, and you can use them if you choose to. Then followed by the C tier, they're going to be more useless pets that are either too expensive or aren't really worth your money, but if you do choose to get them, they can serve some pretty good purposes, and you might get some value out of it. Then in the D tier, we have pets that really don't have many uses at all. They may be specific to one or two things that you can do with them, but realistically, you shouldn't ever be getting these D tier pets. And then followed by the F tier are just pets, do not get them. They are really bad and don't really serve a purpose at all. The only reason you should be getting F tier pets is if you are going for pet score and you want to max out that magic find. But other than that, let's get straight into it. We're going to start with the F tier first up here. So the first pet that I'm going to put in here is going to be the zombie pet. Now the reason why I say the zombie pet belongs in the F tier is because its perks really aren't that good. The chomp perk, which is the first one, is getting health per zombie kill, which realistically you're never going to need and it's never really going to come in handy. Then as for rotten blade and living dead, you deal more damage to zombies and then it increases the defense of undead armor sets. Once again, people don't really use undead armor sets, nor do you want to be dealing more damage to zombies, as you could go with a different pet that just does damage to everything, and you'll get the damage to zombies, plus damage to skeletons, and then everything else as well. For the next pet that we're going to be putting in the F tier is going to be the snowman pet. Similar to the zombie pet, the perks that it has are just useless. This pet is more focused on slowing down enemies and also shoots at a snowball every few seconds, which actually doesn't deal too bad of damage. It does do 5 times your strength, although realistically, once again, this pet doesn't really have much of a use. That snowball is nothing compared to the damage that other pets do provide, so putting this in the F tier as well. So following up on the snowman pet in the F tier, we're going to be putting in the rock pet. Now I feel like a lot of people would say that the rock pet actually can belong in the D tier here, but the reason why I put it in F tier is that the main strategies or things that I've sort of seen the rock pet used for are just outclassed by other things, and there's really nothing that is unique to the rock itself, which would justify a place in the D tier. When you're sitting on the rock, you don't take any knockback, although you can do the same thing with the horse pets, either the skeleton horse or the regular horse pet, and because you can't move while you're on the rock, you're kind of limited to sitting on it the entire time, and there's really not much you can do with this. So rock pet belonging in the F tier. The next one that I put in the F tier as well is going to be the ghoul pet. Same thing as the zombie pet, the perks are just way too niche and just are outclassed by other things. The ghoul pet is more heavily focused on the zombie sword, the reaper scythe, and just healing in general, and you don't really need these healing perks, as you can get things like the rejuvenate enchant, which do boost your natural healing by a bit, and realistically the healing of the zombie sword is already really good anyways, and it doesn't need to be further improved as well. And nobody ever uses the reaper scythe, and the buff that is given by the ghoul pet to the reaper scythe doesn't make it a viable weapon either way. So ghoul pet, also pretty useless, definitely belongs in the F tier. The next pet that I'll be putting in the F tier here is going to be the giraffe pet. This is also a really bad pet. There's almost no reason to use this. The extra regen and the dodge chance that you do get from this pet is kind of okay, but at the same time, Boosted regen is not that necessary with so many other items in the game and enchants that already help you heal a lot. And a dodge chance isn't necessary if you can absolutely destroy everything in your path and kill mobs before they can even touch you. So once again, this just gets outclassed completely by other pets. Next up on the list here, we've got the Spirit Pet. Now, I would say the Spirit Pet might be able to fit in the D tier, like I said, with the Rock Pet, although the pet itself actually has a bug right now where once it equips as a spirit in dungeons, it does not re-equip the pet that you had before. So normally people in dungeon runs end up having their Spirit Pet equipped for the rest of the run, and that can actually cost you quite a fair bit. People end up dying because of it, people end up with slower runs because they weren't able to do as much damage, and the perks that it gives you really aren't that good either. More Spirit Leaps are not necessary whatsoever, and the cooldown reduction of Spirit items is just not good either because Spirit items aren't good either way. Next up on our list here, we've got the Bee Pet. Now the Bee Pet, like I said before, there's really no use for its perks. Weaponized Honey, giving you absorption for damage you take, is pretty much useless. Like I said with the Giraffe's dodge chance, if you're able to just kill everything in your path, you don't really need to have extra healing, extra health, or anything like that. And the extra flower chance is another completely useless perk, and because nobody actually uses the Bee Pet, the perk that gives you extra strength for nearby bees also is very useless because you're not actually able to get that to work at all. And now for the last pet that we have in the F tier, I'm gonna have to put the Jerry Pet in here. Now, I feel like a lot of people are gonna say, oh, Jerry belongs in S+, it's super good or whatever. But realistically speaking, this is a meme pet. Everybody knows it's a complete joke, and it's supposed to be a joke as it literally hurts your stats. But from an objective point of view, there is no utility to the Jerry whatsoever. Even the last perk, which does buff your aspect of the Jerry sword, does not help it enough like other pets do. Even if you combine Ultimate Jerry 5 and the Legendary 100 Jerry Pet with a Jerry sword, you still do more damage with some other pets in the game. And like I said before, I will cover all of that later on. So now moving up into the D tier, the first pet that we're going to put in here is going to be the Skeleton Horse and also the regular horse. Now the reason why I'm going to put both of the horses in D tier is because they do have some sort of utility in the sense that you can ride them if you want to, but the most obvious one is that a lot of people use these for anti-knockback. I've seen lots of people on Jerry events just sit on their horses, ride around and shoot the magma cubes without getting any knockback whatsoever, which does come in somewhat handy and can be fairly useful, but it doesn't boost your damage, it doesn't boost any XP gain, it doesn't boost anything else at all, so that's why I would put it in the D tier and nowhere else. Moving on to the Turtle Pet now. The Turtle Pet also belongs in the D tier just because there are so many better tank pets that outclass this. The Turtle Pet's main attribute is the last perk, which is the one that gives you anti-knockback, and because they added the Dwarf Turtle Shelmet with the Diana Maya, there is no need for this perk anymore, as you can get the anti-knockback on literally any other pet that you choose to use. Now the extra defense that it does provide is nowhere near two other pets that I will be covering later on in the video, as there are stronger tank pets that give you more EHP, more regular HP, and realistically speaking, you're almost never going to be near water, so the second perk where you get more defense near water is also fairly useless. Next up on the list is going to be the Phoenix Pet. Now the reason why I didn't put Phoenix in the F tier is because the Rekindle perk, which does prevent you from dying, actually does have somewhat of a use inside the trap room in dungeons. Now I have seen some players actually use the Phoenix Pet when they do the trap room because, as you guys know, you cannot use abilities when you're inside of a trap room, and if your team does not have a healer or the healer's wish ability is on cooldown and you've just taken a lot of damage from the arrows or whatever traps it may be, if you're on the verge of dying and you don't want to wait it out and spend some time waiting to regen your HP, you can use the Phoenix Pet. If you end up dying, it puts you back to full HP and you're able to keep on going through the trap room and survive. But other than that, there's really nothing that this pet provides. The booster cookie basically got rid of the two perks that were very useful, and the fourth flare perk is also very useless, as there's other pets that do more damage than the Phoenix Pet can. Next up for the D tier, we do have the Hound Pet. Now the reason why I put the Hound Pet in D tier is because not many people actually use this pet at all, as it doesn't really boost your damage, but it does boost your loot gain, so you get a lot more coins with this pet, and you also have a higher chance of dropping armor pieces from mobs. Now these are two pretty useful perks, and I feel like if you're really trying to grind out some good gear and you already do a lot of damage, you already have a lot of health, and all you want is really good drops, the Hound Pet can be pretty good in a situation like that. But realistically speaking, there's a lot more other pets that do help you go through dungeon runs, help you farm other things a lot better and more efficiently, which is why I would place the Hound Pet in the D tier. And for the last pet that belongs in the D tier, we're going to have to put the parrot pets in here as well. Now, a lot of you guys may argue that the parrot pet belongs in the F tier, and I actually had it in the F tier for quite a long time before thinking about it a bit more and bumping it up to the D tier. And the reason why I put this in the D tier is because it does have two semi-useful perks that I can see being applied to any player. Now, as you guys know, the introduction of the guard potion basically destroyed the parrot's main perk, being the extra potion duration time. Now, this perk is still relatively useful, as if you play on an Iron Man profile, you can use that to your advantage, because in order to get booster cookies on an Iron Man profile, you have to actually spend money on the booster cookies and not buy them off the bazaar. And because you can't use the auction house, you can't buy guard potions off of there either. So you are going to have to brew your own potions, and the parrot can actually be useful for the situation. So parrot pet relatively useless, but there are still a couple things that you can do with it, which is why I put it in the D tier. Moving on to the C tier, now we have the Blaze pet. Now the Blaze pet is belonging in the C tier because it is really powerful, and paired with the Frozen Blaze armor set, you can do a lot of damage, get a lot of EHP, lots of health, and everything that you need. And overall, it is a very solid pet. However, it's very expensive. And the other flaw of the Blaze pet is that it does get outclassed by other things, and there are other pets that do a very good job, not just paired with the Frozen Blaze armor, but with anything else in the game. So Blaze pet is very situational. It's a pet that you can get if you choose to go with Frozen Blaze armor, but realistically, most people are going to go for Necron, Storm, and the high level floor 7 loot. And Blaze pet kind of just falls off in that situation. Next up on the list, we have the Megalodon pet. Now this is a very interesting one. I feel like the Megalodon is very underrated because a lot of people don't actually talk about it, people don't use it, and overall it just sort of gets neglected by the community. But it does actually boost the shark armor and has some really good damaging perks, which can be somewhat useful if you do get it to a good level. And it also has Magic Find as a base stat, so overall you can use it as like a main farming pet, just going about your day-to-day Skyblock life. But there are better options, there are some pretty good choices that you can use instead of the Megalodon, so that's why I put it in the C tier and not anywhere higher, nowhere lower, as I felt like it was a rightful place for this pet to be. Now, next up on the list, I'm going to put the Spider and the Magma Cube pet in the C tier. Now, the reason why I put both of these ones together is because they both really only serve one purpose, and that purpose is to AFK minions. So the first two perks of the spider pet here, which allows you to slow down mobs when you do hit them or get more strength for the spiders in range, is pretty useless. Nobody really uses it for that. But the spider does boost the production of spider and tarantula minions, and because tarantula minions are currently the best in the game if you AFK them, the spider minion only makes them even stronger than that, which is why I'd put it in C tier, as it can be very good for making money, but that's really the only use it has. And then same goes for the Magma Cube pet. This does buff the Ember Armor and you do more damage to slimes and Magma Cubes, but that's pretty useless. Nobody needs those perks. The main reason you'd be using this pet is also to boost the production of Magma Cube minions, which are also one of the best minions in the game, except they're just not as strong as Tarantula minions. Next up on the list, we also have the Chicken pet. Chicken pet is in the C tier for the exact same reason as these two pets. You really only use it to AFK chicken minions if you really needed it, and it can be pretty useful, although chicken minions aren't that good at the moment. And then last up on the list for the C tier pets, I'm going to be moving the Pigman into this one. Now the Pigman is very similar to the Blaze pet here, so both these pets do actually buff a couple of very specific items. The Pigman pet does boost the damage of the Pigman sword, and the Pigman sword is a very good early game weapon, as a lot of people don't actually use it, so you can get some really cheap mythic, like recombobulated and maxed out Pigman swords for very, very cheap. And the giant killer perk of the Pigman pet is really powerful in dealing a lot of damage to most mobs. However, just like the Blaze pet, it's a very expensive one to get a hold of. There's really no point in using a Pigman pet when there are pets that out damage the damage of the Pigman, and because you are sort of limited to using a Pigman sword with this, and you don't get as much freedom with your pet choice, then I wouldn't really choose this Pigman pet over anything else I'm going to cover later on in the video, as there are definitely some better choices. Moving up to the B tier now, the first pet that I have on this list is going to be the Lion pet. Now the Lion pet is a fairly solid choice overall. It's just an overall really good damaging pet, and it's also fairly cheap to get a hold of. If you upgrade them through Cat by buying say a rare or an epic one off of Aringo or the auction house, you upgrade it through Cat, you level it up a little bit, and you get it to a decent level. It does have perks that are fully based on dealing damage and are really good at doing them. However, there are better pets that do more damage than the Lion pet does, which is why I put it in the B tier. It's a choice that you can go for if you want to try this out early on, but there are still better options out there, and I wouldn't really recommend this to anybody. Next up on the list, we have the Golem pet. Now the Golem pet does have some pretty interesting utility. A lot of people tend to use this to do a ton of damage to dragons in the end, and it also has a lot of functionality as an archer when you do play inside of dungeons. The Golem Pet's last perk does allow you to do a ridiculous amount of damage in one hit, and when that burst damage is required, it can be very useful, but it's very situational. The setup in order to get that third perk to actually work is really difficult to do, and it's not as reliable as other pets that I will cover in this list. For the third pet that we're going to be putting in the B tier is going to be the Endermite pet. Now, the Endermite pet is a fairly solid all-round type pet. It's really useful for farming zealots, which is more of an early game task that people who are just starting out tend to get into, as getting summoning eyes is very profitable for them. And it's very useful to use the Endermite pet to farm zealots, as you're able to get a lot more money from the ender pearls that you do pick up from them, and you also get a nice little speed boost out of that as well. However, because the Endermite is only really used for this task and it doesn't provide any damage, it doesn't provide an XP boost or anything really that special, I wouldn't be placing this anywhere higher than the B tier, and it's sort of just a really average pet overall. Next up on our list here, we've got the Flying Fish pet. Now, this one is a fairly interesting one. It is very useful for solo fishing, and if you decide to use the Diver's armor set, it buffs that as well very nicely. The fishing speed with this pet is very good, and I would definitely recommend trying one out if you do get the chance, although I would say that there is another pet in the game that is so much better than the Flying Fish, and it really isn't that great when you compare it to what I'm going to cover later on in the video, so I wouldn't really go out of your way for this pet. I'd only get it if you sort of get the opportunity to. And now last up in the B tier, we're going to be covering the Pig pet. Now, the reason why the Pig pet is in the B tier is because this actually has some fairly good potential when it comes to farming. The trample ability that it does have is very useful for farming all kinds of different crops, as it does replant them when you do step over them, and you can set up some really nice AFK farms with it. However, there are more efficient means of farming that get you XP much quicker and also get you a lot more drops than the Pig pet does. So I wouldn't say this pet is super amazing, but I wouldn't say that it's completely useless either. Now, moving on to the A tier, now this is when we start to get some pretty useful pets that I would recommend that some people actually do get their hands on. And first up here, I'm actually going to put the Blue Whale in A tier. Now, I feel like a lot of people are going to get somewhat mad about this, and they'd actually put the Blue Whale in, say, the S or the S plus tier. Now, the reason why I put it in the A tier is that I still don't think that this pet is really good as a tank pet. It's definitely superior to that of the Turtle pet, as the Turtle pet really doesn't do that much in comparison to the Blue Whale. If you pair the Blue Whale with a Shellmate, it does make an all-round excellent pet for mages and also for the tank class in dungeons, but it just doesn't compare to another pet that I'll cover later on, which is still much more superior to that of the Blue Whale. So that's why it belongs in the A tier. It's not bad, I would recommend it to some people, but there's another pet that does sort of triumph over the Blue Whale, which I would recommend instead. Now, next up on this list, we're going to be putting the Black Cat in the A tier. Now, the Black Cat is a very good pet. You get extra pet luck with it, you get more magic find with it as well, and it also increases your speed cap overall. Now, the Black Cat has recently had a lot more recognition than it was ever before, as people are starting to use this for frag running in floor 7, and it's actually fairly useful for being able to pick up speed in dungeons, as speed in dungeons is a lot harder to get than outside in the normal part of the game. The Black Cat also provides some extra magic find and pet luck, which is really useful to have, although there is still a pet that is better for magic find in this game, which I have actually placed higher up on this list. Next up for the A tier, we're going to be placing the Enderman in here. Now, the reason why I put the Enderman pet in here is because it's just very good of a pet all round overall. It's usually the first ever pet that a Skyblock player gets their hands on, as the rare Enderman normally goes for about 500 coins on the auction house. They're pretty much useless to most people, but it does provide a lot of damage for such a very cheap pet and easy one to get a hold of. And if you do get your hands on a legendary pet and you are able to use that Zealot Madness perk, it can be pretty helpful for farming summoning eyes if that's something that you choose to do. Although apart from that, there are still better pets out there that help you make more money than the Enderman actually does. And as for an early game pet, there are still pets that are stronger than the Enderman, which you should be working towards instead. The next pet I'll be talking about is going to be the Ocelot now. The Ocelot pet is really useful. It boosts your foraging XP overall and helps you get foraging levels up a lot faster. Although in comparison to the other foraging pet, which I will cover later on, which I think is definitely superior, the Ocelot really just doesn't compare at all. The next pet I will talk about is going to be the Jellyfish now. The Jellyfish pet, once again, very good pet. It is very useful for the healer class inside of dungeons and can provide very good support for all the players inside of a team. But most players nowadays, especially mid to late game dungeon players, don't really need the extra health anymore, and the Jellyfish's support perks aren't that useful, and you're better off having a tank pet like a Blue Whale or a damaging pet like some of the other pets that I'll cover later on in the video. And last but not least, for the A tier, we have the Tarantula Pet. Now, the Tarantula Pet is actually very powerful, and I feel like it's super underrated, and it's one that people sort of overlook all the time. So the first two perks of the Tarantula are pretty useless. Healing reduction debuffs do not affect you as much, and Tarantula armor perks do have a lower cooldown than they used to. However, the very last perk of the Tarantula Pet, being that you get 40% more combat XP from spiders, is really powerful. If you use this pet to farm Tara Slayers, you can level up your combat XP very quickly, and you can also do those tarantula bosses much faster than you'd be able to with, say, a wolf pet, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the video. But because it's so specific to just spiders and you can really only use it on spiders, I wouldn't place it anywhere higher than this, but it is the best pet for combat XP if you do end up farming spiders. Now, stepping up to the S tier, these are pets that I would definitely recommend you try and go for. However, I would still recommend you go for the S plus pets before the ones I'm about to list. But these are ones that you should definitely be keeping at the back of your mind and always looking out to see if you can get them for cheap. So first up on the S list, we're going to be going with the Ender Dragon pet. Now, recently these pets have been dropping crazy amounts in price and have become more and more affordable day by day. Now, a lot of people think that this pet is still very useless, as there's other pets that do more damage or have more health or provide other useful perks. But people still forget that the Ender Dragon has the highest damage in the game and will probably remain that way for a very long time. So if you are trying to do the most amount of damage possible and also get a little bit of magic find, a little bit of pet luck with the superior perk, this pet is definitely the way to go. Next up on the list, we're going to go with the Rabbit Pet. Now, the Rabbit Pet is excellent for farming, and you can level up your farming skill very quickly with the Rabbit Pet. However, the only reason why I didn't put it in something like the S plus tier is that there is another farming pet which I would say is slightly better than the Rabbit Pet, as not too many people are looking to level up their farming skills super high anymore, as getting money from farming is much more desirable for any Skyblock player, and there is a pet that actually helps you do that more than the Rabbit does. Now, the next two pets that I'm going to put up together on this list are going to be the Tiger Pet and the Skeleton Pet. Now, the Tiger Pet is very useful. It boosts your overall ferocity by 100%, and if you do already have a lot of base ferocity, it ends up boosting it by a crazy amount. Now, if you have a very specific build with, say, a Valkyrie, or maybe not as expensive of a weapon, but any weapon that has a lot of ferocity and you put the Dirty Reforge on it, use a Tiger Pet and, say, use the Werewolf armor, you can stack your ferocity up to ridiculous amounts and do a lot of damage with the double swipes, and overall, this can in some situations out damage almost any other pet in the game, which is why I put it in the S rank but not quite the S plus. The reason why I put the Skeleton Pet up with the Tiger Pet is, like the Tiger Pet, it's very situational but has a lot of very useful perks with it. This pet is very cheap and is somewhat neglected by a lot of the community. However, the perks that it provides to Archer is very good, especially for how cheap this pet really is. The triple damage in dungeons with the combo stacks on the first and second perk from the skeleton is very useful as an archer, as you're not only going to be dealing more damage per shot, but every shot you get is going to keep on stacking and stacking with the combo perk. And paired with the last perk as well, with the little skeleton that actually shoots out an arrow that does a lot of damage, this is very useful for taking out the bats inside of dungeon runs, as the skeleton does not miss ever, and as a result it can help you kill those little creatures before they escape out of their tunnels or actually end up dying to fire or anything like that. Moving on to the next pets on our tier list here, we're going to go with the Squid Pet and also the Guardian Pet. Now, these two I've put together up here in the S ranking with the Rabbit Pet as well, is because all three of these actually boost your XP gain for three completely different skills. Now, XP gain is very important in Hypixel Skyblock, and because the Squid Pet helps you get more XP when fishing, it's really useful for leveling up one of the hardest skills to level in the game. And the Guardian Pet is also really good, as it helps you hit that enchanting 60 milestone faster than ever, and there's really nothing else that can compete with these pets. And now, last but not least, for the last pet that we're going to be putting in the S tier here is going to be the Bat Pet. Now, reason why I put the Bat Pet in the S tier is because this pet is insane for spooky festivals, and if you're someone like me who's really adamant about doing as many spooky festivals as you can, it's going to help you get lots of high placements in this, get as much candy as possible, and overall you can profit a ridiculous amount from spooky festivals if you use the Bat Pet. And now, as you can see, we are moving on to the last part of our tier list. We've got the S plus pets. Now, I'm going to just put them all up here so you guys can see them a little bit better, and I'll talk about them each one by one as we go. So the first three pets that I've put up here being the Wither Skeleton, the Baby Yeti, and the Sheep, I've put them here because they're just insanely powerful dungeon pets. Now, the Wither Skeleton and the Sheep come at a very affordable price of not much more, over 10 million coins for the Wither Skeleton pet, and the Sheep pet is normally around 6 to 8 million coins at level 100, legendary as as well. The Wither Skeleton overall caters to almost every class in the game, especially on floor 7, as it's very good at taking out wither mobs, and the Sheep Pet just overall caters towards a mage class, specifically a right click mage, as you can do a lot more damage with your abilities and you get a lot more mana as well. The Baby Yeti, however, is the best tanking pet in the game, and I feel like a lot of people overhype the blue whale in comparison to the Baby Yeti, as the Baby Yeti is able to turn all of your strength into defense, and that overall is very powerful for archers, for berserkers, and also for tanks as well if you choose to, and overall it lets you survive a lot of floors and also survive a lot of different mobs, which is why I'd put the Baby Yeti in the S+. Now the next pet that I have up here in the S+ category is going to be the Griffin pet. Now the reason why the Griffin is up here is because this pet just provides so much utility that I could go on and on about it for a very long time. Not only are the basic stats really useful that have a ton of different perks, including Magic Find, and you've also got crit damage and crit chance, but every single one of its perks are useful in some way. The Odyssey perk actually lets you dig up the mobs from the mythological ritual event. The next perk isn't really useful on main profiles, but if you do play on an Iron Man profile, having the permanent regen 7 and strength 8 is very useful, as you can't really get god potions like I've mentioned before when I was talking about the Parrot pet over here. The third perk for the Griffin pet isn't very useful, as it heals your nearby allies and doesn't really help you in any way, but the fourth perk is where this really pulls through, as that extra strength that you do get can be very useful for taking out mobs, and this overall is one of the best damaging pets in the game that also provides a lot of other useful perks. And then for the last 5 pets that I have in the S+ category are going to be the wolf, the elephant, the dolphin, the silverfish, and the monkey pet. Now these are all up here because they all help you boost your skills much faster than any other pet in the game. The wolf pet is very good at boosting your combat XP, similar to that of the tarantula. However, the tarantula only works on spiders while the wolf pet works on everything. The elephant pet helps you get a lot more drops when farming, and like I said before, the rabbit pet does boost your XP gain. However, people tend to favor getting money over XP a lot more when farming, so the elephant pet is a lot more useful in that situation, as it helps you get more money from farming itself. The dolphin pet I would say is currently the best fishing pet in the game. The flying fish, like I said before, is pretty useful. It's good for solo fishing and does actually have some very good fishing speeds. And the squid pet is also really good for boosting your XP as well. However, the dolphin pet has the fastest fishing speed in the game, especially if you fish with other players. The sea creature chance on this thing is really good as well, which helps you catch up a lot more sea creatures than anyone else. And the final perk, which is the one that stuns the sea creatures when you catch them up, is very nice as well, as it gives you a grace period to either switch to superior armor to take it out with more magic find, or if you just need some time to react to the mob that you've fished up, that stun is very nice overall. The silverfish pet here just boosts your mining XP and also gives you haste 3, which is fairly useful in dungeons and also pretty useful on an Iron Man profile. And because mining is one of the hardest skills to level up in the game, the silverfish does help you do that a lot quicker, which is why I would place this really highly as well. And then for the last pet that I will cover in this video here is going to be the monkey pet. The monkey pet I would say is superior to the ocelot pet because the tree cap reduction on this is absolutely insane. The fact that you can chop down trees much quicker than the ocelot pet is the reason why the ocelot pet's XP boost isn't as good as the monkey pet, as you can cut down more trees in the time that you can cut down with the ocelot pet, which overall actually gives you more XP than the ocelot does. And the other perks being more speed in the park and double drops from logs is also pretty useful, as you get more money and you're also a little bit quicker as well. And with all that being said, that's going to wrap up everything for today's video for you guys. Hopefully you all found this informative or enjoyable in some way, and I explained myself pretty well on why you should get these pets, or why you shouldn't get these pets. If you would like to take a screenshot of the video right here so you're able to get a nice picture of this tier list and share it around with people, or actually use it for your own benefit later on, go for it. It's up on the screen for you guys to see right here. But with all that being said, hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you do have any further questions about this tier list, feel free to ask me those over on my Twitch streams. I do stream every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The links are down in the description below. But with all that being said, that's going to be it for me today, guys. And as always, take care and peace. Get Mastiff? Okay, Mastiff. Alright. No way, you're joking, there's no bloody way, bro. What do you mean, It's recombobulated, guys, it's recombobulated as well.